Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to another Battle Spirits Saga video. And we are finally back up and running with all our computer issues, and so excited because Set 3 spoiler season has ended. Yes, we're getting a few SPRs that are left and all that stuff, but at the time of recording, all the cards are now previewed, so let's talk about them. And I decided that this set, I'm going to do things a little bit differently and try to do this going forward, right? So I want to try to do the normal, like, card by card, go for the review, skip the vanillas for obvious reasons, and at the end of this, I want to have a sample deck list that is a intro-friendly guide to the set, right? So one that's going to be like, hey, you have a new player who's showing up at locals, give them this deck that is very easy and very straightforward and mostly monocolored, right? And get them into the fold of like what is Battle Spirits and how the different colors play. Because, to segue into the next part, I want to give huge credits to Bandai for Set 3. It overall does look like a great set from both a casual, friendly, and intro set, meaning we have these big payoff strategies that make players go, oh, I'm going to put in the sanctuaries, I'm going to have some pilgrims, I'm going to have this really cool key spirit at the top end who does this thing and rewards the gameplay, right? Like, set 2 didn't really have that, and quite honestly, set 1 really didn't have it other than, like, Nova, you could argue, but, you know, whatever, it's Nova. So it just, as a overall set design, is a lot better. And then, of course, the other part, too, is the artwork is gorgeous. Yes, we're starting with the SPRs. These are going to be the most attractive cards of the set. But also, we got a lot more Battle Spirits Saga exclusive artwork with Set 3, including all the Guardians and all the Sanctuaries, which, again, are like the key part of this set, and Mandala, who is the villain, which we're going to talk about with the blue spoilers. So all around, this is looking to be a very good set. Now, yes, at the time of recording this, box prices are still lower than what we'd like to see, not as low as Set 1 or Set 2, because now we're getting to the point where it's getting closer and closer to the actual print to demand, where Set 4, the box prices, you know, good and bad, box prices are going to go back up. It's going to be a more expensive game, very heavy quotation marks there, because it is a Bandai game. At the end of the day, the game pieces are meant to be very, very cheap by design, but also giving value back to the stores, making players want to support their LGS by buy a box promos, good pricing, all the good stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see this shift from, you know, Set 2 bottomed out. Set 3 is a little bit better. There's not as much product flood going on in the market. You can check TCG Player and like places to see that happening. And then with Set 4, there's going to be like this hard cutoff for nope, only stores that have a scene are getting product. So singles are going to be a little bit harder to come by. And of course, the SPRs are all going to go up in price, which again, overall, a very good thing, but for at least right now, for players getting into the game, it's really easy to say, hey, for basically $50, you can build any competitive deck that you want and go win $7,000, right? So there is a little bit of pros and cons. Obviously, I'm going to be extremely biased, and I want the stores to get their value back, you know, ASAP and be able to support the game and obviously want to put Battle Spirits Saga on their shelf. But I digress, getting a little bit too into it. But overall, Set 3 does give me a lot of hope, and at least if this trend continues for Set 4, because we know we're getting the artist illustrations, Set 5 is supposed to have a super sick collab, but they haven't announced exactly what it is yet. There's a lot to look forward to. So with that, as again, I mentioned, we're going to do the colors at a time. So we're going to go about red and go in set order. And at the very end, I will have a deck preview. So with all that out of the way, let's finally get into it. So the first Guardian, the first big red dragon himself, Ancient Guardian Trident Dragon. It has 3 heads, and you know it's kind of hard to see the rest of the body because it's hidden behind the text box, but we got to see it in that previous image, which was really nice. And truthfully, this is a card which I rated super low at first, I'll be perfectly honest, but now as I'm going through it and how I see how it combos with the Sanctuary reveal was obviously really good, getting a card draw engine, having the 5-drop, that's going to be really strong and just hitting different BP thresholds and what you can destroy. I really like this. This is going to be a very proactive red strategy that's not either the all-in aggro version that we've seen from Pterosaurs, right? Or the have to like control the board, really slow down the game, or combo out with Nova. So we are getting a nice middle ground or mid-range style of strategy that comes together quite nicely. So it does have Awaken, which as a reminder lets you move the cores around during combat, which can be important, but then most importantly is during its attack step with the level 2 is at the start step, place 2 cores from your trash that are not a soul core onto the spirit for every Ruby Sanctuary you control. So what is really cool about this is, yes, ideally you want to have 1 Ruby Sanctuary, which we'll talk at the end, but long story short, it's card draw for this archetype. If you have 2 of them, right? Because it's for every Ruby Sanctuary, you now able to get put extra cores on him. And if you have other awakened spirits that you've either, developed that turn or got onto your board otherwise, you can then move those extra cores between your other spirits while keeping this one at their 10,000, BP power. Of course, there's going to come at some point where you don't have a spirit to play to really get the most value out of that core recursion that you're going to get turn after turn, but getting this up to 10k, getting to destroy any number of your opponent's spirits, the combined total of 6,000 or fewer BP, and then also draw off the Ruby Sanctuary is a lot of what we want to be doing. So again, Volcanic Break is a very strong card. We saw that all during set 1. We saw it during set 2. Hitting 6,000 BP is pretty huge. But what I really like about this in particular is that it's going to heavily punish the yellow and purple decks of set 3, especially if we see more of the other lander, right? Fable Beast, maybe not so much, but when you're able to start killing 2 or 3 things with it and then also draw a card off of it, this card is going to present a lot of pressure in certain matchups. And even then, if you consider, this can just catch an Elk sometimes or an Aegis, right? It's very flexible in what it wants to be hitting, at least in the early to mid game, where as long as this can get enough value for you and control the board, you are likely going to be running away with this one card. So again, I think there is a conversation to be had about where red sits overall in terms of the aggro, which, might not be a thing with Floodstream anymore, to a more slower mid-range with the Ancient Dragon here, or full-on like top-end control of something of Nova, right? So I'm really curious to see where this all develops, but honestly, I've come around on this card. I really do like it, and I'm very excited to play test this one because of the shell that I put together that you'll see at the end, which is not obviously the shell that I'm testing, but a good intro to what this archetype does. Moving on from there, we have Water Dragon King Levia. So again, this set is all about ancient dragons and dragonoids between a set standpoint of what got boosted, what got the most support. And honestly, some of these are a miss, and that's, kind of to be expected sometimes. So during your attack step, when one of your spirits with Awaken reduces your opponent's life, select one of your opponent's Nexus that costs 3 or 4 and destroy it. So this one requires us to have a large Awaken amount of spirits, which again, we have the Bagwo promo, which I have here on the right side, which is a, similar effect that like, one wants you to reduce life, but only hits 3 or 4. The other one is destroyed by BP comparison, but then you can get any Nexus off of it. So there's a little bit of give and take in each one of these strategies, and we haven't seen a huge payoff reason for like Ancient Dragons specifically yet. And also this one doesn't have Awaken by itself, which was really annoying. Which again, because it says when a spirit with awakens, I really wish it counted itself. So it just kind of sits on the board. The BP thresholds are just not exciting. And then even the level 2 and 3, when the spirit attacks, all your red spirits gain 1000 BP during this turn. So like, yes, there's BP thresholds. We're going to talk about another card that kind of combos with this. And I see that the deck that they were trying to make, like the set 3 red deck is Ancient Dragons and Dragonoids coming together. And it's super cool, but I think there's just better cards you can be playing overall. But if you were just building a only set 3 deck, I can definitely see what they were going with because the level 2 is super relevant. That said, we are playing red. We have a bunch of other ways to destroy Nexus cards. I do like this as like a one of just because if you have it, because the repeatable destruction of 3 and 4, primarily 4, right? We've seen a lot of Nexus in this next set that all want to be 4. So hey, Ferrari Slashes looks really playable again all of a sudden. But ultimately, I think you're going to have enough board control between, your Burning Forces, your Andromedas that you're probably playing anyways, and other cards that just kind of get it done while this one's BPs aren't really all that exciting. So there might be some world in the future where we have a card that is like Where the Stars Are Born for Star Dragons, where it's like, for every ancient dragon you have in play, do X. Then I might get more on board with it, but for right now, I think the card's going to be a pass for me. But I do like how they're building up this ancient dragon and dragonoid archetype that might see something big in set 4. Yes, Nova is going to take the spotlight for the double symbol and all that, but I think by set 4, this might come together a bit better. Moving on from there, and this is a card that I was at first, I think I rated super low, and now I think it's like one of the best cards in the set. And I could be out of my mind, to be fair, but once I got to building with this and looking more into this proactive red strategy, I am insanely in love with this card. So Battle Axe Apollo Dinos, right? So Flash Awaken, that is important. Remember, we talked about Awakening sometimes matters. It's going to combo well with our other spirit. We have other cards that care about Awaken. You can kind of get where that's going, but what I really like is the obvious part, the level 2 and level 3. Only 5k for 3 cores, which is also great. If this spirit has a soul core on it, destroy all of your opponent's spirits with BPs equal to this spirit's BP. So like we saw with Meteor Seagworm in set 2, right? This is a when the spirit attacks trigger. So if you have 2 of these on board because of it having Awaken, you can now set up turns where you're destroying like a 5k and a 6k and a 7k and an 8k, right? If you're getting the multiple triggers across different spirits, depending on what you're looking for. And I realize at first glance, not that exciting, 5k and 7k. What does that really hit, right? However, you have to remember that red is the BP boosting color, right? So we have Volcanic Canyon, which, spoiler, we're always going to play a 4 of in this list. It's now saying, okay, on my turn, I can either kill your best 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, or 8,000 cost spirit. And then heaven forbid we have some modal boost that makes it go up to 10k. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me kill your 2 elephants and your Aegis out of nowhere that were all at max power level, right? So there's going to be a really interesting dynamic between how this card eventually works out. Yes, I do wish it had another reduction, but because of the ceiling for this card of just how much it can destroy is going to be absolutely insane. Now, the other side of that is, yes, you can just get under it, right? With the 4K and things like yellow or purple can, build their board in a way where you're not caring about this card. But then, as I mentioned with that X Rare, guess what? If Battle Axe isn't killing you, Trident Dragon's going to kill you. One of these 2 spirits is going to kill your board one way or another, right? It just depends on how much of your board are you willing to lose. So it creates this really interesting dynamic about like what battle point thresholds do you set and what turns during what do your opponent expects to do. Like, it's so crazy. I like that this like BP really matters standpoint of it. And also there's going to be a magic card later on that we're going to talk about, which can really make this card get cheeky if you need a BP boost. So I think this card is absolutely something to look forward to. I think it's going to be a format staple. I could, again, be out of my mind, but I'm rating this card. Again, was super low on it at first, but now that I've like sat down, tried to put some lists together, I cannot wait to sleeve him up. A card that, all right, let's talk about it, right? So Blue Lizardman Pilgrim. So one of these cycles in this set, and that means something that every color gets, or almost every color gets because blue didn't, is the Pilgrim cycle and the Sanctuary cycle. These are cards we're meant to go together. We're going to talk about Ruby Sanctuary later, which is super playable and definitely we'll see play. But overall, the Pilgrims fell very flat. I do like the yellow one the best because it works with your Blessed Cathedral. It has Blessed, which helps it work with your Dual Eagles and things of that nature. But overall, it's just not exciting and doesn't do enough, right? So this one only reveals the top 3, or excuse me, views the top 3 cards, and then you get to pick a Ruby Sanctuary to it. So it does help you dig. I think it's super cool from like a, what did they do with set 3? If you like just put it in a vacuum, I think all the Pilgrims are super cool, super flavorful. I love what each one of the colors do. But when you expand that lens, you look at set 2 and set 1, it's just very hard to find room to play the Pilgrims in the style of decks that you want to. So again, I think this is one that overall, I won't spend time talking about them because I think all the Pilgrims are generally going to be a miss. But again, I do love the overall flavor for them and just the overall, what does it mean for the set design standpoint that I think Bandai, again, hit a home run on, right? Because it's not always what is going to be the most competitive and always be tier 1. You also want to make decks that are fun to play and really rewards players for getting to have that strategy put into their decks and have that big payoff at the end. So for that regard, even if the Pilgrims will never see play, I think Bandai did a really great job on that. And I think all their artworks are super cute for like what each color does and how they tie the color back to the effect as well. Really cool. Unfortunately, probably going to be unplayable. Another one that I'm just like super lost on, Blaze Lion Coalmane. So this is the other X rare for the set. An 8 cost with 6 reduction. So this guy is coming out cheap if you flood the board. So when the spirit attacks during this turn, this spirit gains 2,000 BP for every spirit you control. Chances are, if you have all those red reductions, this guy is getting huge and just never dying in combat. You can bounce it. You can have other type of removal for it, Deadly Balance if it's like the only thing. Obviously, there's ways to remove it, but generally speaking, if you built a board around this and you're trying to get that level 2, level 3 effect off, this guy's going to be massive. He's just coming through and for sure killing something or getting in damage. What's really interesting, though, is during your end step, at the start of the step, draw cards until you have 3 cards in hand. So this plays into a try to flood the board and get value during your end step, but at the same time, as we talked about during the blue starter deck, you have Floodstream entering the meta. So like anytime you play the 1-for-1s or like 2-for-2s, you're just going to get your entire board eaten alive, and then Blaze Lion does nothing because you don't have the reductions for it. So I'm really curious to see where this goes. I don't think it has a home at all right now. I would love it to because I like the idea of just like the vomit your hand, be very aggressive red strategies that are, not all in white aggro, but have a little bit more play to them. And Coldbane is, what that card wants to be in terms of refilling your hand and being able to, get more gas and find those absolute ice shields or find those other battle tricks that you want while you're flooding the board and just getting to refill, right? Because your smaller guys will probably die in that combat, but then Blaze Lion Coldbane is allowing you to refill and find more answers. However, just because of the effect of this not really having a home yet. Again, there's no Emperor Beast payoff. It's just like red reduction payoff. I don't see this finding a home immediately, but it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes if we get some type of like empty your hand strategy in Battle Spirit Saga. And for there, we did see at least an enabler. So the 4-cost Lamquar, when the spirit attacks, you may discard a red card to make all your spirits gain 2,000 BP. So really important there is that you have to discard a red card, but at the same time, if you have like a green Worker Ant-Man or something, right, it's going to also get the buff. So this is one where, again, I can see what they were going for. It does work with Coldbane in the sense of like, oh, sometimes you just get a card stuck in your hand that you can't play and you want to discard it so you can just draw another card at the end of turn, and plus a BP boost is nice. But that's not enough, right? And yes, it has Confront. It can go up to a 7k or 8k Confront if you really need it to. Sure, that's fine. But ultimately, it's just something that we don't really want to be discarding out of red a lot of times. So it doesn't have a home just yet. Like if we get a couple more cards that say like, oh, when you discard, do X, then yeah, I could definitely get on board with this. And I do like the idea like, oh, but you can, discard a spell you didn't need at the time just to draw another card, right? So any type of cycling is always welcome, but again, falls pretty flat, I think, for where you want to be in the set. But hand filtering eventually is good sometimes, maybe. That's why Volcanic is still around, right? So we'll see where this ends up, but ultimately right now, not terribly excited for it. One that is super interesting and caught me off guard is Imperial Black Dragon Darkworm. So it's a Star Dragon. It's the beloved 6-cost 3 reduction that we see all the time. At level 1, 2, and 3, it has Confront. And then for 5 cores and 8k, all of your Star Dragon and Dragonoid spirits gain 3,000 BP and Confront. So this goes up to a 11k because it does count itself. So 11 for 5 is fine. But the thing I don't get, and I guess this just goes back to like, oh, they're doing this whole block design format. We're going back to set 2. Like, this is exactly what Dragonoids wanted in set 2, because then finally you get to play like the Dragon Rush card because your entire board gets Confront and then you're drawing a bunch of cards. That's fine, but like, why also Star Dragons? Like, yes, it counts itself and for that reason, but like we don't have anything that within Star Dragons that really cares about this, because Nova's just going to clear the board, and then you have the other side, which is like Mars combo. So like half this card works, half this card doesn't, but it could be really important for something in set 4. So it was very interesting to see a card where like, yeah, this is fine for those other like archetypes that maybe want it, but you have like a set 2 design and a set 4 design, and really no good home for this in set 3, which is, again, as we've been kind of like building up to this point where it's like, oh, we have good Ancient Dragons and we have good Dragonoids, and that's a deck, and now this card only buffs half of them. No, it's gonna be a pass for me. Like, you don't care that much about the Dragonoid decks in this block, or in this set, I should say. But in set 2, there's definitely more of a home for it. So really interesting card. I'm curious to see if anyone can make this work. And I definitely think like the Dragno Rush draw a bunch of cards is a meme, but it's really fun when it goes off, sort of thing. So not something I expect to see play, but wouldn't be surprised if it does pick up, because it is a strong effect. Like 3,000 BP is huge, and getting Confront so you can challenge your entire board of your opponents is really good as well. So really, we'll have to wait and see. And speaking of Dragono King, there he is on the side. Moving on from there, we have a 5-drop 3 reduction Dino King Megalosar, right? This is a double symbol for Dragono King. It has Confront, which is kind of whatever. And this is another one where it's like, oh, cool, it's a Pterosaur, so it does count for Giganorex. It's a Dragonoid, so it goes into Dragono King, gets you the draw card. It has Confront if you somehow have the 5 cores. Because, like, 4K for 3, like, that's just not great, right? It's not killing anything at that point. But it is allowing you to find more of those Dragonoid density that you wanted if you ever get the Dragon Rush card to be online. But overall, not exciting, right? So I think this is one that probably would have been too good at that point. But I would have really liked one more reduction and some other effect on this. I do like that it gives you the double symbol just to get that Dragonoid or Dragonoid King online a little bit sooner. But ultimately, it's just something that like we didn't really need for the deck because you're going to be playing more of a mid-range or build-up plan anyways into Dragonoid King. So one that I just don't see it finding a home and was kind of lost as to like where's going to be the perfect shell for it. But again, it was definitely meant to be with Dragonoid King, and it is a Dragonoid tag, so it cares about those things. But ultimately, I think this is not one of the Dragonoids you want to play, so it doesn't make the cut. Going on from there, we have Saber Callus. During your attack step, all your spirits with Confront gain 2,000 BP. I went ahead and just threw a screenshot together of like, hey, what's everything that can potentially have Confront? Spoiler, you don't care about this card at all. I don't know where it's finding a home. The stats are just not great. It doesn't have Confront itself. If it did, it would get like a nice boost, right? And then that would be more reasonable. But overall, just a very okay card where Confront, might matter at some point. But at least for now, you have enough of other pumps and good cards anyways that I can't ever imagine this card seeing play. It is a Pterosaur, right, which can matter for Giganorex, but Giganorex is getting big enough, so like, why do you care about this guy, sort of thing. So that's just going to be a straight skip for me. Camellia Whip, this one is going to be insane. This one is definitely going to find a home somewhere. Definitely one of the best cards of the set, in my opinion. 2 cost, 1 reduction. It is a 3k for 1, 5k for 3. So yes, it can't block at level 1 or level 2, but that's fine because you want to be turning this guy sideways anyways. During opponent's attack step, if this spirit is exhausted, your opponent's spirits with fewer BP than this spirit cannot reduce your life. I want to live the dream and bring back the red-white archetype where now if we have the fortress, right, we can make this a 6k or then suddenly a 7k if we have double fortress, right? There are ways to boost this BP that they can try to attack, but if you have even like a suppression, right, something to boost it up, you say, okay, well, now I don't have to block with this, but now everything that is 8k or less is no longer dealing me damage. So it's a way to slow down the game. I don't think it has the biggest of home yet. Like, you probably played some like lower aggressive strategies anyways. Rest in peace. It gets flood streamed. It dies very quickly. But overall, I think it is something that I look forward to seeing how it gets utilized in mid-range or control various strategies that might come online with set 4, right? We might actually see dual color cards in set 4. Not confirmed yet or anything like that, but there's a weird number of X rares where it looks like there might be 1 or 2 extra that will be dual colors. So who knows? We'll see. Probably would have been in the notes for the distributor notes, right, for the product page, but it wasn't. So all we can do is speculate at this time. But love this card. Can't wait to see where it goes. Maybe it does have a home right now, and anyways, in some more aggressive builds, just because you want to turn it sideways and then it prevents you from the crackback. That's fine too. But we'll end up having to wait and see. Moving on to our Nexus, we have the first Sanctuary, 2 cost, 1 reduction, Ruby Sanctuary. So one really important thing to note is that this is just very, very cheap and easy to play reductions to get on the board, right? So it is basically a 1 cost investment for a perma reduction on the board because Nexus cards are very hard to remove, and it is something that, can just help build into your mid-range or, control end threats. But what I really like about this one is, yes, it is for 3 cores, which is expensive, but remember, we did have a few ways to get cores back from the graveyard with the key spirit from at least red. When an effect on one of your spirits that costs 5 or more destroys one of your opponent's spirits, draw a card. So I love this because it's exactly what Nova wanted originally. So yay, Nova players, you finally have a second Nexus worth playing. But then also with like Dragonoid King and what we saw Trident Dragon in this set, right? Like all these spirits want this card because it's going to help you draw extra cards when you kill something with their various effects. Again, it does have to be an effect. So it has to be like Dragonoid's destruction with the Soul Core. It has to be Trident Dragons on attack. It has to be Nova's on attack, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to you do have to work for a little bit. You can't just do some main turn or main phase shenanigans stuff, but it is able to draw you a lot of cards. And also, if you have multiple Ruby Sanctuaries, right, now you're drawing 2 or 3 or more cards, depending on how many you actually include in the deck. So now you're suddenly able to ramp a ton of card draw, which is what red wants to be doing. So very excited for this card. Definitely going to be a format staple. I kept going back and forth if I like the red or purple more, but now I am 100% team red. Ruby Sanctuary is wonderful. One that's not so wonderful, but again, in the vacuum of set 3, it makes sense. 4 cost, 2 reduction, Steaming Mountains. What's really important is just, don't even read, the level 1 doesn't matter. The when place doesn't exist. Your Ancient Dragon and Dragonoid spirits gain 2,000 BP. This is the Nexus that is absolutely a home run for the 5 costs and the 7 costs that we mentioned, because it's able to boost them to 1,000, which one helps your 5 drop hit more things, and for your 7 drop to survive combat. So like, it has a home in that regard. I guess I'm playing like a 1 of most of the time. Maybe 2 if you really find out that BP for 2K matters more than just like hitting a Volcanic Nexus or a Volcanic Canyon Nexus, for example. But definitely something that you're just never going to catch something at the when place, which is kind of unfortunate. But it is still a Nexus that you can play early and then have that threat on board. And also just making sure that your 5K can, you know, live through combat once they hit the things that are at the same BP as them. That's fine too. So again, probably something that's only ever going to be a 1 of. It is what it is, but we'll see if it makes the cut. Moving on from there, we have Ritual Fire, the new magic for red. So main, select up to 2 of your opponent's spirits with 4,000 or fewer BP and destroy them. I do like hitting things for 4K. That's a nice threshold. And then what's really interesting here is the burst when you lose a life. So select a spirit, and all your spirits of 1 or more of the same spirit's type gain 2,000 BP. So it's a way to set up a wall. And so now this is interesting where it's like, you have Ancient Dragons that want to play defensively, so you take the first life, and then you can buff your entire board by 2K. That's pretty reasonable, but at the same time, it's one of those things that, like, I don't think the burst effect has a home just yet, but this is just okay removal that we can expect to see against a lot of yellow and purple decks, so most likely going to be a sideboard card, but I do think it is one that I definitely want to try out, and in some matchups, I mean, just having that good old 2-for-1 is going to be exactly what you want. In red, it only costs 2, which is nuts. Now, the one that I love is the Power Boost. So, main flash, select a spirit, it gains 2,000 BP during this turn. If you spend a Soul Core as part of this card's cost, it gains 5,000 instead. So, this one, yes, it is a little rough because you have to spend the Soul Core to get the 5,000, but it is a nice little battle trick, a very cheap battle trick to work with your 5-drop, or if you just need to save your 7 costs in a pinch, boosting him up to 15K is absolutely going to KO stuff. So I like it in the deck that you're going to see at the end because it's like, it works for both of them. If you want to try to like, oh, I need a little bit of a BP boost for my 5-drop so you can, you know, hit all like the 9 or 10s or 11Ks. But then I also want to save it for my 7-drop, which just needs to make sure it survives that combat, because at 5K plus like a Volcanic Canyon on the back end of it, nothing is destroying it in battle on attack, right? Like, it's going to crash through everything at 16K. So love this little dude. The artwork is cute, by the way. So it's going to be interesting to see if that 5K really matters, or if you're just running more of like Ruby Radiance, because then it also draws you a card. But I definitely think it's worth some number of considerations for the deck that you're going to want to be playing. And then from there, we have Double Heart, which is compared a lot to Champa in Dragon Ball Super. One thing I definitely like to note is that Champa, when you just want to combo with the card, it's a lot cheaper to get that sudden double strike. But I think there's definitely a conversation around Double Heart where it's going to find itself as a 1 to 2 of in some lists. And I personally really like it in the Michaela deck for thinking about Luster, because if you think about it, right, Michaela's always going to have the Soul Core. You're going to try to do these big combo flashy plays with like your Shin or the new 6-cost Angel. You play all this magic, they do this thing, your opponent has to like, oh, well, now I got to use all my removal so they don't get all those cards back, but maybe you board wipe them, and then suddenly you go, okay, you killed my Luster guy, Michaela go in, Double Heart for 2 damage, GG, and then they're just dead that way because they had to remove all or use all the removal on the Angel, right? So it's going to be really interesting to see how that dynamic pays out. I think overall, when you play Double Heart, it has to otherwise, be, of course, in a red deck because 7 is just a lot to pay. But when you get those 2 symbols, remember, it is double damage. So it'll be really curious to see where this shakes out. But it is a fun card to include as a 1 or a 2 of, because I think the gotcha moments will definitely be there. And also at the same time, might just mentally help prepare people for set 4 when we do get double symbols. And this is a very real threat you have to care about. So that is the last red card that we're going to talk about. And without further ado, let's get into the deck lists themselves. So again, full disclaimer, these are meant to be first drafts as entry levels into the format, into set 3, and is meant to be as much of set 3 cards as possible. Again, really want to try to make a very streamlined experience for players. So what are we doing, right? We are the mid-range red style of deck. We have things like the Flamefish and the Dino Man to help us survive the early game. I really do like Chameleon Whip as just like a, hey, let's try it out sort of thing, right? Just to see if we can make sure we live those couple early turns of damage. Then we get to go into Battle Axe. We mentioned that he's at that 5k threshold, which can then quickly go up to 6, 7, or 8k if you have that Volcanic Canyon online, getting to destroy a lot of different stuff. And then the big monster, the big key spirit on top of it all, right? The Ancient Guardian Trident Dragon. He's going to come down, be at 12k most of the time. He's going to get to attack. He's going to Volcanic break something, going to draw you some cards off Ruby Sanctuary. He's just a big dragon to get to attack. And then by grinding out your opponent's resources, by being able to play this early, because it's going to have that ability to get back cores as well, you are going to be able to control the flow of the battle with all these BP-based destruction effects. And then, of course, we still have things like Absolute Ice Shield. You gotta have Absolute Ice Shield. Star Blessed Draw. It's just going to be a king of the format. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And then just some various magics to filter it out. So again, as I did say at the beginning of the video, I really don't like Pilgrims in all the, these decks, but spoiler, I'm going to put a Pilgrim in all these decks just for the sake of make it as easy, as streamlined as possible to introduce players into these Guardians, then the Sanctuaries, to make it a more, cohesive strategy, even if it isn't the best, version of the deck overall. But this one, obviously I'm going to change a few cards, but I like it. I really like the idea of where it's going to be going. It's something I'm very excited to try out, and I think that, again, Battle Axe is going to surprise a lot of people. Now, a list I'm not excited about, but I said I was going to do it, and it's definitely going to be a challenge as I go on from here, is the Coal main deck. And it really is just reductions the deck try to get you dead, and you'll see that we have all the free or one cost spirits where possible. We have the Lamp Guard because we have to discard cards. There is no way that this is good. I'm sure it's not, but it's a really cool meme idea for being able to get Coalmane on board. We have Power Boost just to make sure we can get all the BP thresholds as high as possible to make sure that things are living, especially Lampgar, because we need that discard cycle every turn. We're playing the super cheap spells, Star Blessed Draw, again, just because it's going to be a format staple, and Absolute Ice Shield because you're playing Absolute Ice Shield. Again, you can see that we're playing way too many vanillas in this deck. I actually really do like that Dragno Guard is a funny one when you consider Power Boost, because now you're able to just boost him to an insane amount and destroy one of their nexus. So that's a really cool, oh, haha, gotcha moment I found while I was going through, trying to build out the different things. But obviously, you are likely going to be super dead to Flood a lot of times, especially if you try to do, double Dragno Trooper into Bearded Eagle in a turn. So you will have to be very careful about your board deployment. But again, Coalmane at the top end is meant to be the refiller and just a big old, I'm going to attack you guy. This is probably as straightforward as, hey, how do reductions work in Battle Spirit Saga? And just vomit stuff on the board, turn stuff sideways a lot of time. It's not interesting, but hey, it's there. And definitely, I have to imagine this will be the worst deck that I build out of all of them. But again, hey, it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be an intro into set 3 and hey, what does this key spirit do? And I think as we continue to try to grow the game, as people are coming back into the local game store and checking out Battle Spirit Saga with set 3 news or set 4 or set 5, right? You want to have an easy entry point for them to be hey, show me a key spirit. What does it do? Okay, let's play some games and learn how to play. And I think this deck can be good for that, even if it is not the most exciting deck, but it does lean itself into hey, what is Red's identity? What does Red want to be doing? And that can be fine. So with that, that is the Red out of the way for set 3 Aquatic Invaders. And again, I will be trying to do all of these, but getting back to versus videos very, very soon, and we are going to be jumping right into set 3, so you might see a slightly modified version of one of these decks very, very soon on the channel. So of course, if you want to see more Battle Spirit Saga, make sure to like and subscribe for the channel. We'll be doing a lot more content running into, coming up to the Pro Tour set 3 stuff, and there's also some awesome announcements coming up very, very soon I can't wait to talk about. So with that, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.